If you've ever wondered why some people naturally click and others seem impossible to understand, this episode is going to be really interesting. So, Marita Littauer spent decades studying personality types, relationships, and human behavior. And honestly, this conversation went way deeper than just personality tests. Okay, we talked about why opposites attract, why people keep trying to change each other, and how understanding someone better can completely change a relationship. I think you're going to love it. Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life. With me, your host, Giuliano Grimaudo. Marita, thanks so much for joining me today. How's it going?
It's great. I'm delighted to be with you. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it as well. Actually, one of the things that really stood out to me, well, first of all, I've had a couple of different people come on here to talk about personality types in different, I know there's like different, what you'd even call them, like forms of personality types. And those conversations are always really interesting to me. So I was looking forward to talking about that. But the other thing as well was that, am I correct in remembering that you've written 20 books?
I have.
Yeah. So for me, I am on my third book right now.
Good for you.
I'm literally getting the proof today that I have to look at and be like, yes, it's good.
That's
Thumbs
exciting.
up. And that's like when you said, when I saw that you'd written 20 books, I was like, that's the path that I'm on. Like, I feel like I have a couple of books written, but I'm like, I have so much more I could write about and keep putting out. And so I'm kind of excited to talk to someone who's also been through that process.
That's great. And that's when it's wonderful that you've got so much you want to talk about. That's kind of when you know you're ready for the next book.
Yeah. So Marita, tell me a little bit about yourself for me and for anybody listening, right? Who doesn't know anything about you.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I have written 20 books, and I specifically at this point in the history of the world want to talk about my best-selling book, which is probably honestly the only one that's still actively selling and available.
Okay.
There are a couple others that are available print on demand that my publisher still will make them available, but it's print on demand, and I order 10 copies or whatever.
Yeah.
But my book Wired That Way was published 20 years ago. And actually, it was 20 years ago this week that my book was released. So
wow.
it's anniversary season. And I just realized back last fall that it was 20 years. I don't know what made me think about that, what made me realize that it had been 20 years since this book was published. And, there are very few books out there that have that kind of history, that are continuously in publication, still selling, and remaining relevant for 20 years.
That's amazing.
And when I realized it myself, I was like, oh, wow, that's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's a big accomplishment.
So this is actually my 19th book, but it is my bestseller. And I live in Lubbock, Texas, and I have spent a lot of my adult life speaking and writing. And I'm now semi-retired, although I'm doing this. So I'm not really doing anything that makes any money currently, but I have kind of dedicated 2026 to trying to breathe new life into Wired That Way, because it's really solid, good content.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's still selling.
Yeah.
I still get a royalty check twice a year from this book, and I've not been doing anything out there to promote it. Really almost for 20 years.
Yeah.
So, that's an exciting thing for me. We've recently, 6 years ago, we added the electronic personality profile.
Okay.
Let me back up for a sec, because you're kind of just letting me talk. So,
okay, well, hold on. Before you go, let me ask you a question. So what just popped in my head is it was kind of crazy when you said this was your 19th book. So before you had written 18 other books, what was your intention with those books? Was it along similar topics? Was it totally different? Were you like, I'm going to be a best-selling author? Or were you just like, hey, I'm just writing stuff because I'm enjoying it? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay. So I was not ever dying to be a best-selling author.
Okay.
My very first book, my very first book is called Shades of Beauty. And it's a book on colors. And, it's funny because this is fashionable again right now.
I was going to say, that's the thing right now.
It is. And people are doing that. And I wrote this book, let's see, when did I write it? 1982.
Wow.
You probably weren't even born yet, were you?
No, I wasn't. Not even. You know, it's funny. Like I literally just the other day, they have like a template in Chat GPT that's like, figure out what your color thing is, you know? So it's like, you're right. It's literally like so many people are like talking about it.
I know, it's funny that it's kind of back now, because I wrote that in 1982 and I was like, I don't know, I'm 67 now. So I was like 24.
Yeah.
And my mother now she's now deceased, but my mother was in her genre a very popular, famous author. And in fact, see, I didn't know where we were going to go, or I have all my props ready.
It's okay.
But this is my mother's best-selling book. And this is not really right. It says more than 1 million sold. Well, it is right because it's more than 1 million, but this number is ancient history.
Really?
Because we siblings, we still get a check. My mother's been dead for 6 years, and we still get a check from this book twice a year.
Wow.
So my mother was very popular in her genre, Florence Littauer.
Okay.
In the Christian women's world, my mother was really a trailblazer.
Interesting.
And she was one of the very, very early women speakers who traveled around the country, got paid quite well to do it. And she wrote 40 books.
40?
So, yes.
Whoa.
She wrote 40 books.
Whoa.
Yeah. So you can look her up on Amazon. It's all there. She's got her own Wikipedia page and so forth. So what happened when I wrote Shades of Beauty is the book called Color Me Beautiful was very popular. It's kind of what introduced the topic of having your colors done.
Yeah.
And the book was very popular. Well, I've been in the publishing industry now long enough to be able to picture that what happened is the editorial board at this publishing house was sitting around having an editorial meeting, and someone said, you know, this Color Me Beautiful book is a huge bestseller. We need to get something like that. And I can picture that someone said, Florence's daughter does that, which is true. It was what I was doing.
Yeah.
For a decade, I did color analysis for women, and I traveled all over the country doing that. I would go give a speech somewhere, and then women would kind of sign up for an appointment, and I would stay a few days after the speech, and I would do their colors. So that's what I was doing. So I can picture the editorial board sitting around saying, we need a book like this. And someone said, oh, Florence's daughter does that. And so the publisher wrote me a letter and said, we'd like you to write us a book on color analysis. Now, they didn't know whether I could write or not. And the fact of the matter is, I was not a good writer. But they knew that Florence would not let Marita turn in a bad book. And I knew the content. I knew the material because I spoke on it all the time. And in fact, that's one of the things that I really recommend for people who want to write a book. I recommend speak on it first. Go out and speak on it first. And then when you sit down to write, it's like you have an audience in front of you that never has to get up and go to the bathroom. They don't have to take a break. You can give them the long version of everything you wish you had time to say in a speech. So I wrote the book, and my mother rewrote the book. And we turned it into the publisher, and lo and behold, it became a book. And so it was popular, obviously, for a while, and then it went out of vogue. Like everybody that was interested had already had their colors done, and they maybe had it done 2 or 3 times and gotten totally different results each time. And so then people were like, oh, well, you know, blow that off. And it went away. So that was how I got started in writing. It's not like I really ever had a mission to be a writer.
Sure.
Now I really am a writer. As soon as we're done, I'm on an article for my blog that I will post tomorrow.
Oh, nice. So then, okay, so what's interesting though is that this first book was more about like the way you look, right? Like this was like about colors. But then did I also understand correctly? Obviously, because this book we're talking about personalities is more in like the personal development space. Is that what the theme of the other books leaned into more as well?
Yes, more. They're all Christian, nonfiction, personal growth. When people ask me and they meet me and they find out I'm an author, though that's not usually the first thing I say because I haven't written a book really in 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Well, it's really probably more like 16 years because my last book, I I should just grab them all, huh? My last book is a political kind of book. It's a public affairs is what they call this genre.
Interesting.
And I was working as it's a whole long story, but I was working as the executive director of a nonprofit organization that advocated on behalf of energy and the energy industry. And this is the only book I've written that is self-published.
Interesting. Well, it's funny because the 3 books that I've written are all self-published, and I've never worked with.
It's a different world today.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. So true. Like, I mean, even if you're talking 5 to 10 years ago, it was completely different.
Yeah, it's definitely whole publishing thing. I'm on a couple Facebook groups for women writers, agents, editors. And I feel so sad for so many of these women who are trying to write these books. And again, I'm on a women's one, so that's who I'm talking about.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, I just did something to my computer and I didn't lose you. You're just not in front of me. There you are. It's okay. The hand gesture, I hit something. Anyway, it's because so much of what the self-published author has to do now, my publisher did for me then. I don't worry about cover design. They maybe send me a couple ideas and say, which one do you like?
Yeah.
And they handle that.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about the printing process. I don't have to worry about getting it into bookstores. I don't have to worry, but it's different now.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard that the typical, like what you would normally expect working with a publisher is also different. That and correct me if I'm wrong, you would know more than me, I would assume, in this scenario.
I know less about current, though.
Oh, okay, well, that's true. So what I've heard is that, publishers are expecting authors to be able to market their own books.
Yes.
So it's not just like, hey, cool, you sign a book deal, great, write the book, and you're just good for the rest. Just, like you said, get a check the rest of your life. It's like, no, they expect you to also market it.
The only reason I get a check for the rest of my, not really for the rest of my life, is that I'm doing things like this.
Yep.
Part of it is that I wrote a book that is timeless.
Yeah.
And I had my mother's name, and I had her entree into the industry. And back in the day, I used to speak on this topic all over the country. So I was still, that's marketing. No publisher today, at least in the personal growth genre, is going to take a book from someone, though it may be the most fabulous book in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
No one's going to take that book from you and just publish it if you have no platform.
Yep. Exactly.
And back in my day, the social media platform was not so much the thing.
Yeah.
It was the speaking.
Yeah.
It was being able to be articulate about the topic, and being able to, the fact that I traveled around the country several weekends a month speaking to major women's conferences around the country. I had a built-in audience to buy my book.
Yep. It makes sense.
And so I sold a lot of books that way. And then, because the book, as I said, is timeless and valuable, it has continued selling. And as I said, I'm dedicating 2026 to kind of trying to breathe some new life into it and make more people aware of it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm curious your opinion, because I've obviously, having written a couple books and having more in me, have thought about this process a lot. And I think I'm less and less seeing a reason to actually work with a publisher because of the fact that you're like, what exactly are they bringing to the table other than the little label that goes on the book, right? You're like, I can do cover. I can hire someone to design the cover. I can, hire someone to do all the formatting. I'm gonna have to market it anyway. What exactly is a publisher doing?
I totally agree. And that's kind of why my last book is self-published, because it was a real specific niche.
Yeah.
I kind of owned that niche.
Yeah.
And no publisher was going to want that book. But if you have a big name, if you're a movie star or someone that has a name that has a following, a publisher will take trash from you. They will.
It's so true, though.
They will have an editor clean it up and fix it and make it something that will, at least sell past the, So if you're a big name and you've got a following, you can get anything published. But, if you're just Giuliano, you're not going to get you've got a podcast. And I don't know what else you do.
No,
but,
it's okay. No, I get it.
Unless you have a big following, you're not even going to be able to get your book in the hands of the publisher.
Yep.
Because there's too many gatekeepers along the way.
Yeah.
That you have to get through.
Well, yeah, and ultimately, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, what is it that they actually are gonna do besides take a percentage of the sales, right? I'm just like, I can't even.
No, they will get it into places you probably would never get, or they have the potential to get it into places that you will never get it, and they are making the upfront investment.
Because they write you a check up front, right?
Yes, they do write you. I mean, that's the dream world, and it has been my case for every single book I've written.
Yeah.
But again, I wrote a while ago, and I did get a check up front, but they also paid for the cover design. They paid for all the printing. They paid for the editing. I did that out of order, but editing should have gone first.
Yeah.
But they paid for all that, so I got a check up front, and I didn't spend any money.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I get that.
And because that publisher has now made an investment in my book of probably $10,000 including all the elements.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get that big a check up front. I maybe got a $2,500 check up front.
Oh, okay.
But the publisher now has sunk roughly $10,000, let's just say, into making this book. Well, find the right book here, but into making the book a reality.
Yeah.
Where it can be in my hands, and they've sunk some money into it. So because they've sunk money into it, they've now got to market it to try to earn their money back.
Yeah.
So they've made an investment in you, the author.
Yeah.
But it is a partnership. They're not going to take your book on in the beginning if you're just going to sit at home and la, la, la. You've got to get out there and hustle that book.
Yeah.
And speaking engagements is still one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah.
Radio interviews, podcast interviews. The podcast world is a whole thing that wasn't around back when I was starting out. It was all radio
true.
interviews.
Well, I think podcasts are amazing now because, like, when you listen to someone just talk about a subject, like it could be like a 2-hour podcast and they could cover everything and you still want to buy their book. You're still just like, I still want to read the book.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes so much sense.
And it's fun because the podcast, you can do long form.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually currently hired a publicist to get me on radio shows. And I actually used to do that.
Oh.
I used to have a business. I had employees and I had a business. In fact, I started doing this because my mother and my father were frustrated that her publisher was not doing enough to get her book out there. Now, every author with a traditional publisher, unless they're movie star like, is going to have that exact same complaint.
Yeah.
Every author feels their publisher is not doing enough to get the book out there. Because and honestly, if you're going to put in the work to write a book, you've written a couple, it's not easy.
Yeah.
To nail your butt in the chair and get those words onto the computer and make this book a reality, it's a lot of work. And you've got to really believe in your topic to your very core.
Yeah.
To put forth that effort. And if you put forth that level of effort, you must, in order to do that, believe that every person out there needs your book.
Yeah.
Or if you don't believe, maybe not every person.
Well, yeah. The people who it's appropriate for, that they need it.
The people in your niche.
Yeah.
You got to believe that this book they really need this book or you shouldn't write it.
Yeah.
Well, then if you believe that, you're going to believe it's going to be, my publisher's not doing enough. So one day my father and I how old was I? Probably maybe early 30s.
Okay.
My father called me into his office and I kind of worked in the family seminar business. And my father called me into his office and he said, your mother's publisher is not doing enough to get her books out there, to get her books known. And he said, that is your new job. And so what I started doing is there was a directory at the time. I'm sure, I don't know if it exists anymore. It's probably all online now. I'm just looking to see if I still have a copy of it. No, I don't. There is a directory out there from the National Religious Broadcasters Association. And it had every station in every city, town, rural community in the country. And so I started going through that and just plain cold calling radio stations and saying, do you have a live local talk show? And if they did, I would say, may I have, contact info? And then I would reach out to that person and try to get my mother on their show. And ultimately, I developed a system.
Yeah.
And it worked. The publisher saw my mother's book sales increase. So the publisher then reached out to me and said, can you do this for other authors? And I was like, yeah, I can. Because once I had the list built and the contacts made, then I started. So ultimately, at the peak, I don't know how many books we were doing, but we were doing 3 or 4 books a week.
Okay.
We were promoting and getting radio interviews for. And that was how we did it then. And so I've actually wired that way for its 20th anniversary. I've actually hired someone who used to be my competition. Because I don't do this. I haven't done it in years.
Yeah.
And I don't have the list. I don't have the contacts anymore. And of course, everything changes.
Yeah.
So I've actually hired someone to get me on those radio shows.
Okay.
I'm doing the podcast myself, but I've hired someone to get me on the radio shows.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you've ever thought about writing a book, this is for you. Quick heads up, I'm going to share something I've personally used, and if you check it out through my link, I may earn a commission. When I was working on my books, I learned how to do it all from the team at Peaceful Profits. They're the ones who helped me understand how to actually approach the whole process, from having the idea all the way to getting it out into the world. So if writing a book has been on your mind, whether to grow your business, get speaking gigs, or just make an impact by sharing your story, you have to check out Peaceful Profits. Go to author.howtobeaperson.co or just click the link in the show notes now. All right, back to the episode. It's funny what you were saying about...
She's talking about marketing the book.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like you said, like to sit down and write a book, you have to like really care about it. And I think this is one of the things that's interesting is like when it comes to like, you have to care enough about you can't just write a book to write a book, right? You have to care enough about the topic that you're also then going to go and spend time talking about it for who knows how many hours on end to other people so that people know about it and go read the book.
Yes. And most people who are self-published, I mentioned them on some of these groups on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I feel so sad for some of these ladies who write these books and they pay to self-publish it. And it's different now because you can do print on demand.
Yeah.
Back in the day when you were self-publishing, you had to buy to make it cost-effective per copy. You had to buy 3,000 books.
Yeah.
And they think that all their friends are going to want one, all their family's going to want one. And the fact that they're now an author, that people in the grocery store are going to want one. And, your friends and family may want one, but they all expect it free.
Yeah, exactly.
And my heart hurts for some of these ladies who have done this. They've gone down this road. Perhaps they've been hoodwinked by an unscrupulous self-publisher. And they spent the money and they bought these books and they're like, well, they're not selling. Well, you can't just put it on Amazon and expect it to sell. You have to do stuff.
Yep.
To generate an audience, to generate a market for it. Even when you're today... even with a traditional publisher. And even back then, I mean, that's why I ended up owning or running a publicity business.
Yeah, well, it's because it's like you said, I feel like this is true of probably most people in most professions is like, they just want to do their job. They don't want to also have to sell. And the thing is that like, that's just not how it is, especially with authors, right? It's like, if you write a book. I mean, there
are people you can hire to do this stuff. Yeah. Like I said, I have hired.
Well, that's the thing. Is like someone has to sell, right? If it's not you, someone's got to do it. You can't just. It's not like build it and they'll come kind of thing. You just write the book, and all of a sudden, people are going to flock to your book. It's like it's just not how it works.
It's sad because it's hard to write a book.
Yep.
You put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
And then when nobody wants it, it's very sad.
It is sad, but that's why you said what you said, like, going on podcasts and talking about it and stuff like that.
And that's
it is
also
effective.
why when I talk to, I've done some author themed podcasts, for writers.
Oh, sure.
And I always say, speak first, go out and give speeches on your topic.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people think, well, no one will hire me because I don't have a book yet. I'm not credible because I don't have a book. Well, they may not hire you, but there's a lot of little local groups
Yo,
that
for
need
sure.
speakers once a month or weekly. Some of them are even weekly.
Yeah.
And if you can go and speak to those groups, whoever your target audience is, it's great, because then you get to test market your material. Because you may think something is great and brilliant, and you go and speak on it, and the audience is just kind of like, well, do you want to waste your time writing a book if that's, if it's not hitting your target?
True.
And plus, when you speak first, you get to refine your material. You find out what really works. And again, I'm talking nonfiction.
Yeah,
Fiction,
yeah.
a whole different world.
Yeah, it's a totally different story.
I'm a voracious reader of fiction. I read about a novel a week.
Wow.
But I have no clue how to write it.
Yeah, I was thinking too is that for someone, if they're like, oh, I'm afraid to go speak, or they just don't see the opportunity there, you could literally just start a podcast too. Like it's essentially the same. You don't get the immediate feedback of an audience, but it is very similar in the sense that you have to flesh out your ideas. Yeah.
How long have you been doing your podcast?
Oh, that's a good question, man. It's probably been a year or so now that I'm like 70 episodes in, or 70 or 80 episodes in.
And so how are your downloads now compared to episode 1?
Oh yeah, no, they just grow. It grows over time. It's just because you keep showing up and you keep putting stuff out,
Yeah. So, it's not an immediate thing.
Yeah, no. And that's what I mean. You don't get the immediate feedback of the audience that you would if you were speaking on a stage, but it does give you the opportunity to flesh out your ideas and to see if there's a market for it.
A lot of the podcasts I do, they say to me, why don't you have a podcast? I'm like, well, I don't really want to work that hard at this point in life.
Like, I'd rather just show up for someone else's.
Yeah, let you do it.
That's so funny. So let's talk about
the marketing side.
What was that?
I don't want to do the marketing side of a new podcast.
Yep.
I do have a blog I started 3 years ago, and that's a whole nother thing.
Sure. So let's talk about Wired That Way. Let's get into it. Tell me about it.
Okay, so before we went on the book writing tangent, I was going to talk about the personality profile that you took before we came to get together. You did the electronic version. But when I was 9 years old, my father developed that personality profile that you took today. Now, and as I said, I'm 67, so that's nearly 60 years ago.
Wow.
This personality profile has been in use. Now, over the years, in the very, very beginning, it was a mimeograph sheet of typewritten words stapled together. You don't even know what mimeograph is, probably.
I don't. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
It was the very early form of copying things, and it was purple.
Okay.
There was some kind of, and it was kind of get high on it. And that's what all over in school, our little worksheets in school, they came off of the mimeograph machine. Okay. And that was the very early copying mechanism, was the mimeograph. Anyway, you don't really need to know that, but that's how we did this originally. And when I was 9, my mother read a book written by Tim LaHaye, and it was called The Spirit-Controlled Temperament. And in that book addressed personality types. Same names that I use, though I've modified them slightly.
Okay.
And he didn't create this concept, but I like to say he kind of brought it into the modern world. The ideas of the 4 basic personality types that I address in Wired That Way they're ancient. And the funny sounding words of the names of the personality types, sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic, the funny sounding words are Greek. And they are Greek. They are from Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, centuries ago.
It's the decade's true, but just
a lot of decades.
many decades.
He observed that people are different.
Yeah.
And when I'm speaking on the topic, I always start by raising my hand and saying to my audience, how many of you have noticed that there are people out there who are different from you? And of course, everyone raises their hand.
Yeah.
And then there's a few holdouts who just don't want to participate, but everybody raises their hand. And then I ask, how many of you live with, work with, or used to live with that person who's different from you? And they all raise their hand. And then I ask them, how many of you ever tried to change that person? They all raise their hand. And then I say, how often has it worked? And by now they're with me.
Yeah.
And they all say, never.
Yeah.
And they say that kind of in choral speaking. So when I'm speaking and I say, well, Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, he made the same observation you did. He observed that there are people out there who are different from one another. And what he did back in the day is he concluded, somewhat falsely, but not 100%, that what made people different is that we had different fluids in our body.
Mm.
And so if you knew anything about Greek, those 4 words I mentioned, sanguine, choleric, melancholy, phlegmatic, they are all fluids.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Translate them. Anyone who knows anything about medicine knows that the word sanguine has to do with blood.
Yeah, that's what I thought. When you said it, I was like, doesn't that mean blood?
It does. And phlegmatic might have to do with what kind of fluid, Giuliano?
Phlegm?
Yes.
Whoa, weird.
Okay, so those of us who are the sanguines, that's me, we're kind of the ones that have, as in his mind, red hot blood coursing through us. We're kind of the tightly wound, loud,
Okay.
outgoing, fun-loving, okay? So now that we've done this little fluid thing, I've never talked about this in this way on a podcast before, but not this part. So because we've come up with phlegm, the peaceful phlegmatic person, I shouldn't have done the peaceful, that gives you a clue.
Okay.
So they have, according to Hippocrates, they have what kind of fluid?
Phlegm?
Yes.
Okay.
So what kind of person does that make them? Just say compared to me.
Oh. Well, you said peaceful, so I gotta give it away. But I imagine more slow, kind of more stable.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's what Hippocrates kind of came up with this theory. Now, modern science, of course, has disproved the fluid idea.
Yeah.
However, now we really know he was more right than we thought because it's really DNA.
Mm.
So it's not a fluid, but we do have different chemistry. We are made up differently. We are wired that way. And so when my mother read this book of Tim LaHaye's, and as I said, he kind of brought this topic into the modern era, and my mother, her work popularized it. So she read his book, and it was life-changing for her because my mother and I were very much the same. So if she was here, you would think, we're 2 peas in a pod.
Okay.
My father, on the other hand, and this is typical, he was opposite from her. We tend to marry someone who's opposite from us. Okay. And he's the kind of person he's the perfect melancholy. So to help people with this, because those funny sounding words don't mean anything to most people, I have added to it a modern day adjective that helps people get a sense of what that means. So I would be the popular sanguine personality.
Okay.
We already mentioned peaceful phlegmatic. My father was the perfect melancholy, represented by the color blue, deep blue like the ocean. He was very thoughtful, introspective, detail conscious, very scheduled. He had spreadsheets for things before we had Excel. He had those big pieces of paper and charts, and that's how his life ran.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in the world wrong with that. But my mother is loud, outgoing, fun-loving, can't find her calendar even if she has one, tends to be late, and forgetful. And so in their marriage, it was really easy for my father, who did everything right, to make my mother feel that she was wrong. And when she read this book on personality type, spirit-controlled temperament, for the first time in her life, she began to see that just because she was different didn't make her wrong.
Yeah.
And my mom is kind of like me, the natural cheerleader of life. As soon as she got these concepts in her head, she started telling her friends. And before long, when I was 9 years old, my parents were having small groups in our living room. And they were discussing this. And this was back before there were book clubs. This was, it was almost 60 years ago. Before book clubs, before churches had small groups and so forth. We had a small group in our living room, and my parents were kind of staying one chapter ahead of the audience, so to speak. Yeah. And literally one night, my father created that personality profile that you took online today. And he typed it up, and we handed it out to people. and it's been in use ever since. And
Wow.
it's gone through different iterations, but
Sure.
the exact profile itself remains the same. So my mom ultimately started speaking on this. Not right away. It took years for this to kind of, go through her neighborhood friends and so forth.
Sure.
Excuse me a moment. And ultimately she wrote a book on it. And I used to go with her as a teenager. I would go with her to her speaking engagements, and I would stand in the back of the room selling those original mimeographs stapled together personality profiles that we would sell. And they didn't have all the support material. And you told me you didn't read all the support material today.
No, I just got the results, and I was like, maybe she'll tell me about it. So
yeah, I will. So there's a list of strengths and weaknesses in the personality profile. There's word definitions that we have now that we didn't have back, in the day. So we've enhanced it as it's gone along. But I grew up in this. And my mother, I'd go to her speaking engagements, and we used to sell cassette tapes, and then we sold CDs, and then we sold books. And people would come to me at the book table in the back of the room and ask me questions about what my mother had just taught. And so I learned what people's questions were, what wasn't getting addressed. And so when I wrote Wired That Way, I wrote it to kind of answer all those questions. Plus, my mom's book, she had Personality Plus for parents, Personality Plus for children, Personality Plus for couples, all of this. And people in the back of the room would say to me, don't you have one book that covers all of this? And so, yes, Wired That Way it has a chapter on marriage. It has a chapter on raising children. It has a chapter on communication. It has, all of that. So one chapter on workplace. And so that's kind of how this book came about.
Yeah, wow, it's so interesting. It's funny. I was thinking how, just like how I said before, like, I've always looked at these different personality tests and different things. And it seems that they come into like in vogue, right? Like to use the phrase you said before, every so often where, people like all of a sudden, like, it seems like everyone's taking these personality tests, right? For a while, it was like Myers-Briggs, where like everyone was putting that in their, social media profile, like in their bio, and then there was like Enneagram and
DISC is another real popular one.
Yeah. And it's just
are the main.
For sure. And it's interesting because I think there is this common experience that we all have as human beings where we think that there is a right or wrong way to be. And that's either from our own perspective or from some, like the example you gave of your parents, where it was like one person has kind of put that on us as if we are not being who we're supposed to be. But I think that's part of the reason why these personality tests, like, stand out to people, because it goes, oh, it kind of like validates who you are as a person.
Yes.
And I think used the wrong way, it can be just like, it can enable like bad behavior, but I think it can also validate you and cause you to be aware of your strengths and lean into them, which makes you just like reach your full potential and really live like the happiest life you could live,
Brilliant. Totally, you got that. But the thing I do want to point out, you said that people feel like it gives it an excuse for bad behavior. And one of the things that I feel is unique to my program, and when I use the word we, I'm referencing my mother, the body of work, but we also train people to be certified to teach this material in whatever their world is. And I started to tell you 6 years ago, we created the personality profile. 2 years ago, I created an online training course for people who want to teach this material. So while the book is 20 years old, we're continuing to add to the greater body of work. But one of the things I think that makes this program, the Wired That Way approach, different from most of the others out there, and it's not that no one covers this, but the main ones we're talking about don't really address this, and that is the idea of growing and maturing. And you probably didn't spend enough time on this on the electronic profile you took today, but one of the things I talk about right at the very beginning is this is a starting place. This helps you see where you are now. It's the you are here dot on a map where you're trying, you know where you want to go, and you know where you are, and how do you get there. understanding your personality, I strongly talk about it when my speeches and in the book, that this is not to be an excuse. This is a tool for growth. And in the book, I have a whole chapter on that called Living in Strength. And I go through each personality type. And if you were, well, let me back up a sec. Any one of the 4 personalities is a great personality if you're living in your strengths. Any one of them is a terrible personality if you're living in your weaknesses. And
I see.
if you think about it, we all know people that have kind of never matured, never grown, are clueless to the offensive things that they do. And so the idea of understanding your personality is to become aware of your strengths and your weaknesses and consciously work to minimize your weaknesses and work to maximize your strengths. And so that's a real key thing that we focus on in this body of work that I think is different from some of the others. Most people tell me that this approach is so much easier for them to understand and remember. You can listen to a speech on this for 1 hour and truly learn enough to save your marriage.
Really? Hey, it's Giuliano. I'm just popping in here to say how much I appreciate you being here listening and that I hope you're enjoying the show. The more support that the show gets, the more episodes can be produced. If you can only support by sharing it with others or leaving a review, I appreciate that so much. But if you're the type of person who would like to support the show directly, you can do so by visiting howtobeaperson.co and click support the show, or just click the link in the show notes. Every bit of support means the world to me, and no matter how you choose to support the show, I appreciate you being here listening. I love what I do, and it's because of people like you who listen to the show that I get to keep doing it. Thanks again so much for being here. All right, back to the episode. I really appreciate what you're saying, because that is, to me, if I had to say like what is the one, if I had to pick one downside to personality tests, personality quizzes, all of these like methods, it's that it feels like you're putting someone in a box, and none of them address that. Like they do make it see, it's actually kind of funny because all these other ones have different names, and yours is called Wired That Way, as if you can't change but yours is the one that's like no actually because the other ones it's just like, hey, this is who you are, sorry, this is who you are, you know what I mean? Where
then they leave you there and you're like, okay, what do I do with this? The other thing that I think is unique about our approach is a heavy emphasis on understanding others. Well, we do definitely, you take the personality profile, you read the stories, you figure out what your personality type is. But the heavy emphasis is on understanding others. And part of the reason is, and I mentioned my mother and her background and her story, for her, understanding who she was life-changing for her. I grew up in this. So understanding who I was just kind of came with the package.
Sure.
But for me, when I started working, which was in roughly 15 years old in a fast food restaurant, for the first time in my life at 15 years old, it's not that long a life, I know, but at that point in my life, but think about it. The first time you have a job, Giuliano, the first time you have a job is the first time you have to work with people that you maybe don't like.
Yep.
Because before that, as a kid, if you don't like someone, you don't hang out with them. Easy peasy. You hang out with people that you click with, that you like. But in the work world, you've got to hang out, work with, be with people that you don't really like. And so for me, with the background in this knowledge, where this material really became so life-changing is in understanding those other people. So I learned, I knew how to watch body language, personal space, cars, the way people dress. All of those things are clues as to what someone's personality type is. And if you know what to look for, I always say, if you know what to look for, you can almost more accurately identify that person's personality than they may be able to themselves. Because, you know, if I'm having a hard time with someone, I can't go up to them and say, hey, Giuliano, I'm having a tough time with you. Would you take this personality profile so I can figure you out? You know, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So, but if you know what to look for, you can usually and often more accurately identify, because a lot of people, by the time they get into the work world in their 30s, 40s, most of us have had so much input into our life. We've had our parents wanted us to be one way. Our teachers wanted us to be another way. Like for me, my teachers were always telling me, Marita, sit down and be quiet. And, that's how I was wired that way. Anyway, but we had what our parents wanted us to be, what our teachers wanted us to be, what our bosses wanted us to be, what our spouses wanted us to be. And so often the person in the next cubicle or whatever, they may not really have a clear concept. And the example I always use of this, and everybody relates to it, is let's say a group of you at work are standing around the water cooler or whatever, conceptually. And one person says to another, oh, you are so, put in any adjective, you are so funny, you are so studious, you are so organized, whatever. And the person that you're talking about goes, I am not. And what's everybody else standing around them do? You've been there, I'm sure. What do they say?
Yes, you are.
Oh, yes, you are. And that person that you're talking about is like, really? I'm like that? Well, see, but you work with this person day in and day out. You see them at their best and you see them at their worst. So oftentimes the people who are part of our life daily, they know us better than we know ourselves.
Yeah.
So I have a whole chapter in here on how to visually identify someone's personality. And then once you know what their personality, at least their main personality, because all of us, I have a color wheel here I like to use as a prop, but we're all a blend. No one is, someone may be more the yellow, or they may be like the yellow-green blend, or they might be the green-blue blend, but most of us have a primary personality and a few smattering of other traits. So once you identify the personality type of the people you live and work with, you can then begin to understand them better as you understand their strengths and weaknesses. And in the book and on the paper personality profile and on the electronic one you did when you go, read the material, you'll have all this same stuff that's on the paper one, you'll have there. So for your partner, your spouse, your friends, your neighbors, whoever's in your life, you identify their personality type. And honestly, you only bother to do this with people you really care about.
Sure.
The kid
or someone you just have to deal with on a regular basis.
Yes. So you care enough about having a decent relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it takes effort to step outside of who you are naturally. Most of us were brought up on what is called the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that's great if you're talking about kids in the sandbox kicking sand in each other's faces. Mom says, well, if you don't want them to do that to you, you don't do that to them. But we carry that into relationships. And we think, I need this, so I'm going to give my husband this. But he's different from me. And what he needs and what I need are not the same. I need a very active social life.
Yeah.
My husband, I tell him, we're going to a party tomorrow night. And I'm going to something tonight. But he says, he rolls his eyes. Do we have another party to go to? Well, we went to a Cinco de Mayo party Tuesday night. And now we're going to something on Saturday night? He's like, so I made a reservation for him for this thing tonight. And if he goes, he goes. If he doesn't, oh well. But, because we have different needs. And I understand who he is, what his personality is, and what his needs are. So I don't have unrealistic expectations of him.
Yeah.
I understand his strengths and weaknesses. And also the third really key thing that I think is different to this approach from others, and you've interviewed others on this topic, so you can tell me if I'm right, but that is, we talk about the emotional needs of each person. And the real relevance is, remember I said you can hear a 1-hour speech on this and learn enough to save your marriage? That comes in with the emotional needs.
Okay.
Because remember I already said we tend to give everybody what we want. We don't stop to think about who they are, adjust our expectations of them, and then look at, okay, now that I understand who they are, what is it they really need? And make an effort to meet what they really need. And that's the emotional needs that come prepackaged with each personality type.
Interesting. Yeah, you know what it reminds me of a little bit is like the love languages. That's something that my wife and I, we read that book before we got married, and it's so funny because I feel like people tend to write it off, and I think it's like, oh, it's pseudoscience or whatever, and you're like, okay, that's fine, but is it helpful, right? And if it is, then like let's do it, right?
And there's definite correlation.
Okay.
We have a whole lesson in my video training course I did for people who want to become certified personality trainers. We have a whole lesson on the personalities and love languages and how they kind of correlate.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I feel like success in relationships, whether you're talking about, you know, a romantic relationship or just people in your life that you're connected to, it really, part of the reason why I like this whole concept is that you have to accept people as they are, right? We tend to go into, just like you were mentioning before, you tend to go into it and be like, well, they're not being who I expect them to be. It's like, well, you shouldn't expect them to be anything other than who they are. And once we're able to accept people for who they are, then
this
we
gives
can
you
relate.
A tool. It gives you a tool to see who they are.
Exactly. Because we kind of go into it blind, you know, and we're just living and we're like, oh, why aren't they like me? And it's like, well, because they don't have to be like you. And once you accept them for who they are, then you can we were saying,
we don't be in trouble if the whole world was like you or the whole world was like me.
Yeah.
Because and that's part of why I believe we naturally are attracted to someone who is different from us, because even though it's subconscious or usually subconscious, we know we have certain lacks. I mean, like I went out to lunch today with a girlfriend and I told my husband, I'll be back and I've got a radio interview at 3. I'll be back in an hour or so. Well, I left the house at 11:15. And when I came home about 12:45 my time, which is when I was scheduled to be with you, he was kind of like, I thought your interview was at 3. I'm like, yeah, well, I was wrong. It was at 1. And my phone chirped, you know, while I'm out to lunch to give me a notice that I have an interview in 30 minutes. I'm like, oh, I was thinking it was at 3. And so I said to my girlfriend, hang on. And I looked it up. So, you know, dates, my husband is a CPA. He's the opposite of me. He says to me, dates, times, and numbers are not your friends. And he is totally right. They are not. That's why. But see, I know that. I know I have certain lacks in how I'm wired. And so I subconsciously am attracted to someone who fills in my shortcomings.
Yeah.
And so I married someone who's a CPA. I don't have to ever worry about taxes again. You know, but I have learned. But see, again, I'm not using it as an excuse. We talked about that.
Yeah.
I've had to learn because I knew I had this interview with you scheduled and I had to be here.
Yeah.
You know? And I do this all the time. I have to make it, if I'm going to go give a speech, which I don't do much of anymore, but I've got to show up at the airplane. There's no place at airports for sanguines who can't remember what time their flight is.
Yeah.
You know? You have to grow up.
Yeah. And I think too, part of it, I think awareness is so much more valuable than people realize, because even when it comes to something that you might describe as a weakness, it can also just simply be something that you are now aware of. You don't have to change about yourself, but maybe you make a change in order to accommodate the fact that you have that weakness. Just like you can imagine, something that you like a platform, and you're like, oh, there's a weakness here. Okay, I just need to put something there to support it. Doesn't mean we need to rebuild the whole platform. It's like, I just need something there to support it. And maybe for you, right? In your instance, you had the little alarm that went off that said, hey, this thing's in 30 minutes. You go, oh, perfect. That's all you need, right? Is just support in place for the things that.
But I have to, I've got to be conscious about. Well, I have to put it on my calendar in the first place.
Yep.
You know, and because if I don't put it on my calendar in the first place, then that little alarm's not going to go off.
Yeah. No, it makes so much sense, and
it's a tool for growth.
Yeah.
And it's a tool to improve relationships, get along with other people. And that's really where I see this is so important, because even in a marriage, if only one part of a marriage or a relationship, you don't have to be married, but whatever, even if only one person is aware of these concepts, assuming the other person is a decent human being. I'm not talking, because there are psychotics out there, and we're not talking about that, okay? We're talking about normal, basic people.
Yeah.
A good person. They're a good person. But if you, even if, since I'm talking about me here, but even if my spouse is not into this, hasn't read the book, doesn't get it, doesn't know the terms, doesn't care, but I treat him the way his personality needs, he's going to respond positively.
Yeah.
He's going, and as a decent human being, it's going to warm up the relationship, even if only one person. But if two people are willing, you can, I think almost every relationship can work. Of course, I have to say almost.
Yeah.
There's no problem. But almost every relationship can work, but every relationship takes work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that when it comes to relationships, like one of the things that for a little while I was doing relationship coaching, and I actually had a different podcast where I was talking about relationships. And one of the things that I've always said is that, like, for me, when like my wife and I, we're married, obviously, but our views on marriage have changed over time. And now we look at it and we go, it's kind of funny how people commit to each other instead of committing to just being the best version of themselves. Because ultimately, I'm not a good husband for you. I'm a good husband because I want to be a good husband, and therefore we have a good relationship because I'm so committed to being a good husband. And same with her, right? Being a good wife. And so I like that, right? Like what you were just saying is kind of like, hey, the other people don't even need to be aware you know about this. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. The point is that you show up as the best version of yourself in whatever this relationship is, whether it's professional or romantic or whatever, but it will have a positive effect. And if you have two people, like you said, who are committed to growth, committed to being the best version of themselves, it's like you almost can't fail, you know?
Yeah, it's true. But if you don't, when you think about, as I mentioned, that we are naturally attracted to someone who's opposite from us.
Yeah.
But if you don't understand this, what happens is you have a tract. But once you go home and you live with each other and you live with the good and the bad, then it becomes attack. And because we're naturally attracted to someone who's opposite from us, I don't know how anybody who doesn't understand this stays married. It's every relationship takes work, and you got to be willing to care enough about the other person to step outside of who you are naturally and think of what do they need, what's important to them, and give them what they need.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, because we talked about, I feel like we touched on 3 of them, right? You mentioned.
Yeah, we did kind of waltz over that.
Yeah, let's talk about the.
I was hoping you'd want to go there. If you didn't, I was going to say, well, can we at least?
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah. So the 4 basic personality types are, and I like to start with what I call the popular sanguine. And for those of you who might be driving and not seeing what we're doing, I have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in my hand, and it's divided into 4 quadrants, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. And so you can visualize this even if you can't see what I'm talking about. So on the top left of the paper is the one I'm going to start with, which is the popular sanguine personality. And I start with this one first, represented by the color yellow. I start with this one first, not because it's the most important, because there is no such thing. They're all important. It's the most obvious to identify. If you have a child who is the popular sanguine, you say about that child, oh, he never met a stranger. And that is true. That's this child. That's the one who's talking to the lady in the grocery store line, and mom is kind of rolling her eyes like, but this is how he is. This is what she does. But that's the popular sanguine. We're the loud, fun-loving, outgoing. We use a lot of hand gestures. We tend to be unscheduled and late, and our personal space tends to be littered with paraphernalia, personal stuff, pictures, stuff. And so that's the popular sanguine. The second most obvious to identify takes us down to the lower right corner is the perfect melancholy, represented by the color blue. And this is the detail-conscious, perfectionistic, scheduled kind of person. They're deep and they're thoughtful. On the flip side, they tend to be kind of moody and lean towards depression because their goal in life is perfection. And think about it, Giuliano, how often have you had a perfect day, let alone a perfect week, month, or year? Life is not perfect.
Yeah.
So when you're looking for perfection, you're going to be disappointed more than the others. Then the third one I like to go to is the top right, and that is the powerful choleric personality represented by the color red. And this is the natural boss of life. This is the child that you see telling the other little children what to do, and the other children just go and do it because this person says it with such command, even as an 8-year-old, that everybody just does it. Well, this is the natural boss of life. This is somebody who is goal-oriented, organized, driven, and they tend to be have a difficulty apologizing because they've grown up being right all the time. I remember my mother saying to me, Marita, you'll get along much better with your father if you just accept that he's always right. And when you are always right, apologies are not really a part of your life. So that's the powerful choleric. And then last, we look at the bottom left, which is the peaceful phlegmatic. And that is the low-key background kind of person. They're never going to take charge. They're not going to interrupt. They're not going to be rude. They're very kind, gracious people. People always like the peaceful phlegmatic person because of those kind of traits. However, they can tend to be unenthusiastic. I'll say to my husband, so how's my outfit? I'm wearing a brand new shirt today, by the way. And I said to him, so how's my outfit? He goes, it's good. And I'm like, good? But, I just have learned from him it's good. Okay, I'm happy. I was happy he noticed that I had on my new shirt today when I went out to lunch. So, they tend to be unenthusiastic and tend to have a little bit of an acerbic wit. So that's a really quick overview of the 4 types. If you think about it, the top 2, yellow, red, hot colors, are both extroverts. And so they're on the top because hot air rises. And so then the bottom 2 are the introverts, and they're the cool colors, the blue and the green. And all of them have, there's something in common. Like the top 2, my little chart I have in my hand, I don't know if you can read it, but it says right there, these top 2 have in common that they both lead. The bottom, those 2 have in common that they both like to analyze. The left column, they have in common, the yellow and the green, that they both like to play. And the right-hand side, that is the right-hand, right? Yeah, because I'm doing it kind of reverse, so I have to keep checking. They have in common that they work. The red and the blue combined into one person is Giuliano. I'm kind of assuming you are. Is these 2 combination here. Okay. This is corporate America's favorite person because this is the natural workaholic. Because they have the drive to get it done, but they have the organization to do it right. And so this is corporate America's favorite person. The yellow and the green, the peaceful phlegmatic, and the popular sanguine in one person, I like to say is everyone's favorite person because they have the fun and the outgoing nature of the popular sanguine, but yet the easygoing, not pushy nature of the peaceful phlegmatic.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I actually, as you describe all of them, I feel like I see parts of myself in each of them. And I know that that's common, right? It's going to be a combination of all of them, but I really don't. I mean, I can pull up my, my results. Do you mind if I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Oh,
because you're clearly not a sanguine.
Okay.
You got no hand gestures.
No, come on. Okay.
Oh, maybe.
Actually, okay. So mine says 40% red.
Okay.
33% yellow.
Okay.
15% blue and 12% green.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So it has you as the top 2, but with the red, the choleric being the dominant one, and some of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I probably would have guessed something like that. Probably across those 2.
You know what I want you to do is to redo it.
Okay.
And try to check 2.
To check 2 on each one?
Yeah, try. And if there aren't two that work for you, don't check. Don't force yourself, but try to check 2.
Interesting. It's funny because I was trying not to check too, because
Yeah.
it was always more than one I felt like that resonated with me. But that's interesting that you say that. So I will go through it again.
It's
And
just kind of interesting to see when it makes which is your dominant one and which is your secondary. It makes that usually a little more clear.
yeah, super interesting. Super cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really have many more questions. I feel like this was a really great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else that you feel like you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, just closing kind of stuff, like the book's
Sure.
available on Amazon.
Yes.
And the paper copy of the personality profile is available on Amazon as well. And if you are a Kindle Unlimited member, both my book and my mother's book on the topic are available free for you as a Kindle Unlimited member.
Nice.
So for those who are Kindle Unlimited, the books are free. The electronic personality profile, and lots of other free resources are available at my website, which is thepersonalities.com. And that's where you go to take the electronic profile. But there's a tab at the top for resources, and that's where all the free resources are. And I do these podcasts, and when I get the link to the podcast, I go put it on that section of my website. Not every day, but maybe once a month when I have some time, I'll, dump those into there. But there's also free videos of a speech that I've done that's a really good introduction to the topic. My mother's classic speech on the topic is available free there as well. So there's a lot of free resources, information on if you're interested in getting trained to be a certified personality trainer, information on that. And then many of our certified personality trainers, I don't do this, but many of them do coaching. And you mentioned that you used to do relationship coaching.
Yeah.
So a lot of them do coaching, and they deal with couples on understanding their personality. And so some of them that do that are listed in that section on the website as well. So there's a lot of different resources available.
That's amazing. Well, I'll definitely be sure to link it in the show notes. Marita, this has been a great conversation. I really, really appreciate you coming on.
I've had fun. You got me wound up. I'm usually much more sedate.
Well, like I said, I had a great time. I appreciate you coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.